The rain had stopped about an hour ago, but the ground was still wet, and Kevin could feel it soaking through the cardboard underneath his sleeping bag. He was 38 years old, and he had been sleeping behind the dumpster of a strip mall on East Broadway in South Dallas for 11 weeks now. The dumpster was behind a Chinese takeout place that threw away a lot of food right before closing, and that was not an accident. Kevin had learned every garbage schedule in a 2-mile radius by the third week. He knew exactly which nights the good stuff came and which nights you just took the coffee grounds and walked away. His hands were dirty and his back hurt, and his left shoe had a hole in it that let the wet concrete touch his sock every time he stood up. He had not felt dry in a long time. The shelter on Lamar Street turned him away 3 nights ago because they were full, and they told him to come back at 6 in the morning to try again for a bed. Kevin did not blame them. The woman at the front desk was named Denise, and she remembered his name every single time, even when there were 40 people in line behind him. She had a tired face and kind eyes, and she called him Mr. Williams like he was somebody who still owned a coat that cost more than $20. He appreciated that more than she would ever know. But tonight he was behind the dumpster again, with his backpack tucked under his head like a pillow, and his phone at 4% battery, and no charger in sight.
The library would open at 9 in the morning, and he could charge it there. That was 7 hours away. Kevin thought about his daughter a lot in the hours between 2 in the morning and dawn. That was the worst stretch. That was when the quiet got loud, and the shame sat on his chest like a bag of wet sand. Her name was Mia, and she was 11 years old, and she lived with his ex-wife LaToya in a little 2-bedroom apartment over in Mesquite. He was supposed to see her every other weekend. That was the agreement. That was the plan. But the last time he saw her was 7 months ago at a McDonald's parking lot where he gave her a stuffed animal he found at Goodwill for $2 and watched her hug it like it was a $100 toy. He cried in his car after LaToya drove away. He sat there with his forehead on the steering wheel, and he did not even have enough gas to run the engine for heat. That was February. Now it was October, and he had not called in 3 weeks because his phone was always dead, and he could not face telling Mia that he was still sleeping outside. Before all of this, Kevin had a job, a real job. He worked at a warehouse distribution center near I-30 for 9 years. He drove a forklift, and he was good at it. His boss said he was the fastest on the night shift, and Kevin took pride in that. He made $18.50 an hour.
It was not rich, but it paid the rent and the car insurance and the child support, and left enough for groceries and maybe a pizza on Friday night. He had a studio apartment off 2nd Avenue that was small, but it was his. He had a couch that folded out, and a little kitchen with 2 burners that worked most of the time, and a window unit AC that sounded like a lawnmower, but it blew cold. He had a routine. Wake up at 4 in the afternoon, make coffee in a broken French press, eat 2 eggs and toast, drive to work by 6, clock in at 7, work until 3 in the morning, drive home, shower, sleep, repeat. That routine saved his life for 9 years. And then it ended in one conversation on a Tuesday morning in January. The warehouse was closing, moving operations to a cheaper facility in Oklahoma. Everyone on night shift was being let go. They handed him a severance check for $1,200 and a pamphlet about unemployment benefits and a cardboard box for his locker stuff. Kevin took his hard hat and his safety vest and his extra pair of work boots, and he walked out to his car at 7 in the morning in the dark and the cold, and he sat there for 45 minutes without turning the key. He was 47 years old. He had a high school diploma and a forklift certification and no college and no savings and no backup plan. He had 9 years of showing up on time and never missing a shift, and that did not matter now. The warehouse did not owe him anything.
That was what the pamphlet said between the lines. Kevin filed for unemployment and got $400 a week. That was less than half of what he used to make. He paid his rent late in February and late again in March. He ate ramen noodles and peanut butter sandwiches, and he told himself it was temporary. He would find something else. He applied to 14 places in 3 weeks: warehouses, grocery stores, delivery services, janitorial work, anything. He got 2 callbacks and 0 job offers. The gap on his resume was only 2 months old, but it might as well have been 2 years. He was too old for the physical jobs, and too young to retire, and too proud to admit he was scared. By April, he could not pay the rent at all. The landlord filed for eviction. Kevin got the notice on a Wednesday, and he called LaToya and asked if he could borrow $300 just to buy some time. LaToya said she did not have it, and he knew she was telling the truth because she worked at a daycare and she was barely keeping her own lights on. The eviction went through on a Friday. Kevin had 2 weeks to get out. He packed his whole life into 6 garbage bags and 2 suitcases. Clothes, a few photographs, his mother's old Bible, the little wooden box where he kept her daughter's drawings. Everything else went to Goodwill or the dumpster.
He sat on the floor of his empty apartment for an hour on the last night, and he looked at the scuff marks on the walls and the water stain on the ceiling and the spot where his bed used to be. He had a car, a 2012 Nissan Altima with 190,000 miles on it and a check engine light that had been on for 2 years. That car became his home. He slept in the back seat with the seats folded down for 3 months. He parked at a Walmart on Buckner Boulevard because they did not tow overnight. He showered at a truck stop when he could afford $6. He washed his face in gas station bathrooms. He kept applying for jobs. He kept getting nothing back. Then the car died. The transmission went out on a Tuesday afternoon on the ramp from 635 to 30. Kevin pushed it to the shoulder and called a tow truck, and the mechanic said it would be $2,800 to fix it, on a car worth maybe $1,500. Kevin did not have $2,800. He had $43 in his pocket and a debit card with negative $12 on it. He signed the title over to the mechanic for $300 cash, and he walked to the nearest bus stop with both suitcases and all 6 garbage bags. He rode the bus for 2 hours to a shelter he read about on a library computer. The shelter was full. He spent his first night outside behind the dumpster. That was 11 weeks ago.
The cardboard was from a broken refrigerator box he found behind an appliance store on a Tuesday. He had cut it into 3 pieces and stacked them flat, and that was the only thing between him and the wet concrete. His sleeping bag was from the Salvation Army. A woman in a church parking lot handed it to him on a Sunday morning and said, "God bless you," and he said, "Thank you, ma'am," and meant it. He had a tarp he found at a construction site that covered him when the rain came, but it had holes now, and the rain found its way through. He had a small blue tent once, but someone stole it while he was at the library charging his phone. That was 3 weeks ago. He did not have the energy to be angry about it anymore. The strip mall had 7 businesses: the Chinese takeout place, a laundromat, a dollar store, an insurance agency that was always closed, a vape shop, a check cashing place, and a church that met in a rented storefront on Sundays. The church people left bottled water and granola bars in a plastic bin by the back door, and Kevin took one of each every day, and never more than one, because other people needed them too. There was a man named Ray who slept behind the laundromat on the other side of the building. Ray was older, maybe 60, maybe older. He had a gray beard and no teeth, and he talked to himself when he thought nobody was listening. Kevin and Ray did not talk much, but they nodded at each other when they passed. That was the code. You see me, I see you. We both know.
We do not need to say it. There was a woman named Lisa who slept in the doorway of the insurance agency sometimes. She had a shopping cart full of plastic bags, and she wore 3 jackets even in October because she said you could never be too careful. Lisa told Kevin her whole story one night when neither of them could sleep. She used to be a nurse, a real nurse with a license and everything. She lost her job after she got hurt lifting a patient, and the painkillers became a problem, and the problem became a fire that burned down her whole life. She had not spoken to her daughter in 4 years. She cried when she said that. Kevin sat with her and did not say anything, and after a while she stopped crying and they both looked at the stars, or what they could see of them through the streetlights. That was the most human Kevin had felt in months. He thought about Lisa when he could not sleep. He thought about Ray. He thought about the kid named Marcus who was maybe 19 and slept behind the dollar store and talked about getting his GED and getting a job and getting an apartment and getting his life back. Marcus still had that fire in his eyes. Kevin recognized it because he used to have it too. But 11 weeks of sleeping on cardboard and eating discarded fried rice and wiping himself with paper towels from gas station bathrooms had put that fire somewhere deep where he could not always reach it. Some days he did not even try. This morning was different though. Kevin woke up before the sun and something felt shifted. He did not know what. Maybe it was the air. October in Dallas was unpredictable. Some days it was still 90 degrees and miserable. But today, the air had a coolness to it that felt and tucked everything behind the dumpster where it would be there when he came back. He put on his backpack and walked toward the bus stop. The library opened at 9, but there was a coffee shop on Jefferson Boulevard that had outdoor outlets, and if you bought something, they let you sit there for hours. Kevin had $2.17 in his pocket. A small black coffee was $1.65. That left him 52 cents and a few hours of charging time. He decided it was worth it. The coffee shop was called Brew, and it was the kind of place that made Kevin feel like an alien. People with laptops and nice headphones and clean shoes. People who ordered drinks with names he did not understand. Oat milk latte, cold foam, macchiato. He just said black coffee, please, and the girl behind the counter smiled and said, "That will be $1.65. And Kevin handed her the exact change, and he meant to say thank you, but his voice caught, and he just nodded instead.
He found an outlet by the window and sat on the ground with his back against the wall, because the chairs were for customers who looked like they belonged, and Kevin knew he did not belong. But the girl did not tell him to move. She brought him a cup of water without him asking, and set it down next to him, and said nothing. Kevin almost cried right there, on the dirty floor of a coffee shop at 7:30 in the morning. He charged his phone to 40% before he worked up the courage to open his email. There were 17 unread messages. Most of them were spam, but one of them was from a man named David who ran a small moving company in Garland. Kevin had applied for a mover position 3 weeks ago. The email said they were still reviewing applications, but they wanted to know if he could come in for an interview on Friday at 2 in the afternoon. This was Wednesday. Kevin had 2 days to figure out how to get from South Dallas to Garland with no car and no money for a bus pass and no clean clothes that did not smell like a dumpster. He read the email 4 times. He wrote down the address on a napkin. He put the napkin in his pocket, and he sat there with his phone in his hands, and he felt something that scared him. Hope. That fire was still in there somewhere. It had just been waiting. He called LaToya. She answered on the 3rd ring, and he could hear the daycare in the background. Kids crying, music playing, a baby screaming.
Kevin said, "I got an interview." And LaToya said, "Wait, what?" And Kevin said, "A moving company in Garland. They want to see me Friday." And LaToya was quiet for a second, and then she said, "Kevin, that is good. That is really good." He told her he did not have a way to get there, and he did not have clean clothes, and he did not want to ask her for anything, but he did not know who else to call. LaToya said, "Come over tonight after I put Mia to bed. I will wash your clothes in my machine. I will drive you to the interview on Friday if I can get someone to cover my shift." Kevin said, "I cannot ask you to do that." And LaToya said, "You are not asking, I am telling you." That was the end of the conversation. Kevin sat in the coffee shop for another 2 hours, and he looked at his reflection in the dark window. He did not recognize himself. His face was thinner than it used to be. His beard was uneven and patchy. His eyes had dark circles under them that looked like bruises. He looked like a man who had been living outside for 11 weeks, because that is exactly what he was. But there was something in his eyes that had not been there yesterday. He did not know what to call it, but he held on to it the way you hold on to a $20 bill in a strong wind. Both hands, fingers tight, do not let go. He left the coffee shop at 10 and walked to the library. The downtown branch on Young Street was big and clean and quiet, and the librarians knew him by now.
He found a computer in the back corner, and he typed out a list of things he needed. A haircut, a clean shirt, work boots if he got the job, a bus pass to get there, a plan for where to sleep after the interview because he could not show up smelling like cardboard and rain. He printed the list on a piece of paper from the free printer and folded it into his pocket next to the napkin. Then he opened a browser and looked up the moving company. David's Moving and Storage, 67 reviews, 4.5 stars. People said they were honest and reliable and showed up on time. Kevin read every review twice. He whispered a prayer to nobody in particular. Please let this be the one. He had been praying more lately, not the way his mother taught him, kneeling by the bed with his hands folded and his eyes closed and a list of requests. That version of prayer felt like a negotiation. Kevin prayed now like a man who had nothing left to bargain with. He just said, "Help me, and please, and thank you for the coffee, and thank you for the water, and please let me see my daughter again, and please let me be somebody she can be proud of." That was it. Short prayers, desperate prayers, prayers that felt more like breathing than talking. He left the library at 4 in the afternoon and walked toward the bus stop that would take him to LaToya's apartment. He had $4.12 left after the coffee. The bus cost $2.50. He put the money in his pocket and waited at the stop with 3 other people who looked as tired as he felt. The bus came at 4:37, and Kevin sat in the back and watched the city go by. South Dallas turned into Mesquite, like one neighborhood bleeding into another. Same streets, same stores, same broken sidewalks, but different. LaToya's apartment was on a street called Pioneer, and Kevin had not been there since before the eviction. He got off the bus and walked 3 blocks and knocked on the door at 5:15. LaToya opened the door and she looked at him for a long time. She did not say, "Oh my God," or "What happened to you," or any of the things people said when they saw how far he had fallen. She just opened the door wider and said, "Come in." And Kevin walked into her living room and it smelled like candles and laundry detergent and something cooking on the stove. He sat on her couch and she handed him a plate of spaghetti, and he ate it like he had not eaten in days, because he had not a real meal, not a plate with meat sauce and garlic bread and a glass of water that did not come from a public fountain. He ate every bite, and LaToya sat across from him with her arms crossed, and she watched him eat, and she did not say anything, and that was the kindest thing she could have done. After dinner, she put his clothes in the washing machine, and he stood in her bathroom and used her shower for the first time in 11 weeks. The water was hot, real hot. He stood under it for 20 minutes and watched the dirt run down the drain, and he cried in there. Just stood there and cried with the water running over his face so LaToya would not hear him. He washed his hair 3 times. He scrubbed his skin until it was red. He put on a pair of LaToya's ex-boyfriend's sweatpants that she had kept for some reason and a t-shirt that was too big, and he sat on her couch again, and he felt like a human being for the first time in a long time. LaToya sat next to him after Mia went to sleep. They watched a movie on TV. Neither of them really watched it. They just sat there in the quiet, and Kevin said, "I am sorry for everything." And LaToya said, "I know." He said, "I am going to get this job." And she said, "I know that too." He wanted to say more, but his throat closed up, and she put her hand on his arm and left it there for a few seconds. And then she stood up and said, "You can sleep on the couch tonight." Kevin slept on that couch from 10:30 at night until 7 in the morning. He did not wake up once. No rain, no dumpster, no police flashlight, no drunk guys yelling at nothing. Just sleep. Deep sleep. The kind of sleep that fixes things inside you that you did not even know were broken. He woke up on Thursday morning and LaToya was already gone to work, but she left a bowl of cereal on the counter and a note that said, "Your clothes are in the dryer, and I got you a bus pass for Friday, and the interview is at 2. Do not be late."
Kevin ate the cereal standing up at the counter, and he folded his clean clothes and put them in his backpack, and he sat on the couch and practiced what he would say in the interview. He would tell the truth. He would say he lost his job at the warehouse. He would say he got evicted. He would say he had been homeless for 11 weeks, but he showed up every single day, and he never stopped looking for work, and he was strong, and he was reliable, and he could carry heavy things all day long without complaining, because he had been carrying heavy things for 9 years at the warehouse, and that was the only kind of work he knew how to do. He would not apologize for being homeless. He would not act ashamed, even though he was. He would just tell the truth and let the truth stand on its own. Thursday passed slowly. Kevin walked back to the dumpster to get his sleeping bag and his tarp and his cardboard. He carried them to a bus stop and rode to a park on the east side of town where he knew it was safer to sleep. He set up his spot under a pavilion near a bathroom that stayed open all night. He ate a granola bar and drank water from the fountain. He called LaToya and asked if Mia could say hi. LaToya put her on the phone, and Kevin heard his daughter's voice for the first time in weeks, and she said, "Daddy, where have you been?" And Kevin said, "I have been working on something, baby, and I will see you soon, I promise." He did not lie. He just did not tell her everything. That was different.
He hoped it was different. He laid down under the pavilion at 9 o'clock, and he looked up at the metal roof, and he listened to the highway in the distance, and he thought about Friday at 2 o'clock. That interview was a door. He did not know what was on the other side, but he was going to walk through it clean and on time and ready to work. He had $2 left and a bus pass and a clean shirt and 11 weeks of hunger behind him. He closed his eyes and he whispered one more prayer into the dark. "Just help me get to Friday. Just get me at 2 o'clock. I will do the rest." Kevin woke up before the sun again, but this time he was not behind the dumpster. He was under the pavilion, and the concrete was hard, but his back hurt less than usual because he had slept through the whole night. The bathroom light was still on, and he could hear somebody coughing in one of the stalls. He sat up and folded his sleeping bag and checked his phone. 7% battery. That was fine. He did not need the phone until later. He had the bus pass in his pocket, and the napkin with the address, and a clean shirt folded inside his backpack. He put on the cleanest pair of jeans he had, and the shirt LaToya washed for him,
and he walked to the gas station on the corner to wash his face and brush his teeth with a toothbrush he kept in his Ziploc bag. The gas station bathroom smelled like bleach and old coffee, and Kevin looked at himself in the mirror. He still looked tired, but he looked clean.
That was enough. The bus ride to Garland took 45 minutes. Kevin sat near the front and watched the neighborhoods change. South Dallas gave way to Mesquite, gave way to Garland. More strip malls, more warehouses, more big trucks parked in dirt lots. He got off the bus at an intersection with no sidewalk and walked half a mile along a road with no shoulder. Cars passed him doing 55 miles an hour, and he hugged the edge of the grass and kept his head down. The moving company was in a metal building at the end of a gravel driveway. A sign on the front said David's Moving in Storage in blue letters that were peeling off. Kevin walked up to the door at 1:45, 15 minutes early. That was how his father taught him. Early is on time is late. He opened the door and walked into a small office with a desk and 2 chairs and a water cooler in the corner. A man sat behind the desk. He was maybe 50 years old, with a gray mustache and big arms and a gold wedding ring that looked tight on his finger. He stood up and shook Kevin's hand and said, "You must be Kevin." And Kevin said, "Yes, sir, thank you for seeing me." The man said, "Call me David." And he pointed to the chair, and Kevin sat down, and David sat down, and for a second, nobody said anything. David looked at Kevin's resume on his computer screen, and then he looked at Kevin, and Kevin could feel David noticing things. The backpack, the worn-out shoes.
The way Kevin's hands were shaking a little, even though he was trying to keep them still. David said, "Tell me about the gap on your resume." Kevin took a breath, and he told the truth. He said, "I worked at a warehouse for 9 years, driving a forklift, and the warehouse closed in January." He said, "I got evicted from my apartment in April." He said, "I have been homeless since July, and I have been sleeping outside and looking for work every single day, and I have not found anything yet." He said, "I need this job, and I will work harder than anybody you have ever hired, and I will never miss a day, and I will show up early every single morning, and I will carry furniture until my arms fall off if that is what you need." He stopped talking, and he waited. His heart was beating so hard he could feel it in his throat. David leaned back in his chair and looked at Kevin for a long time. Then he said, "I was homeless once." Kevin did not expect that. David said, "It was 22 years ago. I lost my wife to cancer, and I lost my house to the bank, and I lost my mind to a bottle of whiskey. I slept in a car for 8 months. I know what you are carrying right now. Do not think I do not know." David stood up and walked to the door and opened it and pointed at a blue truck in the parking lot. He said, "That truck leaves at 6 in the morning tomorrow for a job in Rockwall. 3 bedrooms, 2 couches, a piano. You show up at 5:45 and you work until the truck is empty, and I will pay you $120 cash at the end of the day. If you still want to come back on Monday, we will talk about something permanent." Kevin nodded. He did not trust himself to speak. David shook his hand again and said, "See you at 5:45. Kevin walked out of that office, and he walked half a mile back to the bus stop, and he sat on the bench, and he put his head in his hands, and he cried. Not sad crying, not scared crying. Something else, something he had not felt in so long he almost did not have a name for it. He called Latoya from the bus. She answered, and he told her about the job, and she screamed so loud he had to pull the phone away from his ear. She said, "I knew it, Kevin! I knew it! I knew it!" He told her he needed to be in Garland at 5:45 in the morning, and he did not know how to get there from the pavilion on the bus because the buses did not run that early. Latoya said, "Stay here tonight. Sleep on the couch again. I will drive you at 5 in the morning." Kevin said, "I cannot ask you to do that 2 days in a row." And Latoya said, "You are not asking me. I am telling you, again." Kevin laughed. It was a small laugh. It was the first time he had laughed in months. It felt strange in his chest, but it felt good. He rode the bus back to Mesquite and walked to Latoya's apartment, and she was not home yet, so he sat on the steps and waited. Mia came running out of the apartment next door, where a neighbor watched her after school. She saw Kevin, and she stopped running, and she looked at him like she was trying to figure something out. She was 11 years old, but she was smart, and she knew things, and Kevin could see her putting pieces together in her head. The backpack, the tired eyes, the way he was sitting on the steps instead of pulling up in his car. She walked up to him slowly, and she said, "Daddy, why do you have a backpack?" Kevin said, "Because I am going on a trip, baby." Mia said, "Where?" Kevin said,
to a job. He did not say anything else. She sat down next to him on the steps, and she leaned her head on his shoulder, and they stayed like that until LaToya pulled into the parking lot 15 minutes later. That night, Kevin ate dinner with LaToya and Mia at a little kitchen table that barely fit 3 chairs. Mia talked about school and her friends and a boy named Jalen who pulled her hair on the playground. LaToya made baked chicken and rice and frozen vegetables from a bag. Kevin ate 2 plates, and he helped wash the dishes, and he put Mia to bed by reading her a story from a book she picked out at the school library. He sat on the edge of her bed, and he read about a rabbit who was scared of the dark, and he did voices for all the characters, and Mia laughed, and Kevin realized he could not remember the last time he made his daughter laugh. He kissed her forehead and turned off the light and stood in the hallway for a minute with his hand on the wall. He wanted to remember this exact feeling. Not happiness exactly, something more fragile, something more precious, something he could lose again if he was not careful. He slept on the couch again, and he woke up before LaToya's alarm went off at 4:30. He was already dressed. He made coffee with the machine on her counter, and he poured 2 cups, and he sat in the dark waiting for her. She came out of her bedroom at 4:45 with her hair in a bun and her eyes still half closed, and she took the coffee and said, "You did not have to do that." And Kevin said, "I wanted to." They drove to Garland in her old Honda Civic with the heater on, because October mornings in Texas were cold, even if the afternoons got hot. The sun was not up yet. The streets were empty. LaToya pulled into the gravel driveway at 5:40, and Kevin got out of the car, and she rolled down the window and said, "Call me when you are done." He said, "I will." She said, "Kevin." He turned around. She said, "Do not mess this up." He said, "I will not." She drove away, and Kevin walked into the office. David was already there. He handed Kevin a blue t-shirt with the company name on it and a pair of work gloves. He said, "Put these on and meet me at the truck." Kevin put the shirt on over his clean shirt, and he walked to the blue truck, and 2 other men were already there.
One of them was a young guy named Carlos, who was maybe 25, with tattoos on his neck and a smile that did not quit. The other was an older man named Big John, who was 6'4" and quiet, and looked like he had been moving furniture since before Kevin was born. David introduced them and said, "Kevin is new today." Carlos said, "Welcome, brother." Big John nodded. That was it. The drive to Rockwall took 30 minutes. Kevin sat in the back of the truck with the moving pads and the dollies, and he watched the sun come up over the highway. It was a good sunrise, pink and orange and gold, the kind of sunrise that made you feel like something was starting. He did not say a prayer out loud, but he said one in his head. "Thank you for this day. Thank you for this truck. Thank you for David and LaToya and Carlos and Big John. Help me be strong today. Help me be useful. Help me not mess this up." The house in Rockwall was big, 2 stories, a 3-car garage, a pool in the back that nobody used because it was October. The family was a mom and a dad and 2 kids, and they were moving to a bigger house on the other side of the lake. Kevin carried boxes for 4 hours straight. He carried a couch down a flight of stairs. He carried a mattress that weighed more than he did. He carried a piano, not the whole piano. The piano was one of those small upright ones, and it took 4 of them to get it out the door and down the ramp and into the truck. Kevin's arms burned. His back screamed. His feet hurt in shoes that were falling apart, but he did not stop. He did not complain. He just kept moving, box after box after box. Carlos noticed. Around noon, he handed Kevin a bottle of water and said, "You're doing good, man." Kevin said, "Thank you." Carlos said, "David does not hire just anybody. He sees something in you." Kevin did not know what to say to that, so he just drank the water and got back to work. Big John did not say much, but he started handing Kevin the lighter boxes after a while, and Kevin noticed that. He noticed the small kindness. He filed it away in his memory like a photograph he could look at later when things got hard. They finished loading the truck at 2 in the afternoon. They drove to the new house and unloaded everything by 5. Kevin did not sit down once. He did not eat lunch because he did not want to slow anybody down. By the time they put the last box in the last room, his legs were shaking and his hands were raw even through the gloves. David pulled him aside and handed him a folded stack of cash, $120. Kevin put it in his pocket and he felt the weight of it. Not just the money, the proof. Somebody paid him for his work. Somebody looked at him and saw a worker, not a homeless man. He rode back to the moving company with Carlos and Big John, and Carlos played music on his phone, and Big John fell asleep in the passenger seat, and Kevin watched the sun go down over the highway, and he felt something solid growing in his chest.
David met him at the office and said, "Come back Monday at 6. We will talk about a real schedule." Kevin said, "Yes, sir. Thank you, sir." And he meant it more than he had ever meant anything in his life. He walked to the bus stop, and he waited for the bus, and he called LaToya and told her everything. She cried on the phone. He did not cry this time. He was too tired. But he smiled. He stood at that bus stop in the dark with a $120 in his pocket and a blue t-shirt that smelled like sweat and furniture, and he smiled like a man who had forgotten he could still do that. He did not go back to the pavilion that night. He went to a motel on Cedar Springs Road, a place called the Budget Inn, $45 for one night. The room was small, and the carpet was stained, and the TV did not work, and the bathroom light flickered. But there was a bed, a real bed with sheets and a pillow and a blanket that did not have holes in it. Kevin took a shower, and he put on the clean clothes he had left, and he laid down on that bed at 8:30 at night, and he stared at the ceiling for a long time. He thought about David saying he had been homeless once. He thought about Lisa and Ray and Marcus, still sleeping behind the strip mall.
He thought about Mia reading her rabbit book. He thought about the sunrise that morning. He fell asleep with the TV off and the light on, and he did not dream about anything at all. Monday came fast. Kevin checked out of the motel at 11 in the morning because checkout was at 11, and he had spent 2 nights there, and he had $30 left. He needed to make the money last until Friday, when David said he would get paid again. He took the bus to the library, and he charged his phone, and he looked up shelters that might have a bed open. The one on Lamar was full again. The one on Main Street had a waiting list. The one on Irvay Street only took women and children. He called a church on 2nd Avenue, and a woman named Pastor Brenda said they had a men's program that started in November, and he could put his name on the list. Kevin put his name on the list. He did not know if he could wait until November, but he put his name down anyway. He showed up at David's moving at 6 on Monday morning, and David was waiting for him. David sat him down in the office and said, "Here is the deal. I will pay you $15 an hour to start. You will work Tuesday through Saturday. You will be on the truck with Carlos and Big John. You show up late one time and you are done. You show up drunk or high and you are done. You steal from a customer and I will personally put you in the hospital." Kevin said, "I understand." David said, "Good, now go load the truck." Kevin loaded the truck.
The first week was hard. Not the work. Kevin could do the work. The hard part was the nights. The motel money ran out on Wednesday, and Kevin slept behind a church on Thursday and Friday and Saturday. He showed up to work tired, but he showed up. He did not complain. He did not tell David he was still sleeping outside. He did not want David to change his mind. He kept his backpack in the truck during the day, and nobody asked about it. Carlos asked him once where he lived, and Kevin said over in Mesquite, and Carlos did not ask again. Kevin did not lie, he just did not tell the whole truth. The second week, David paid him $540 for 36 hours of work. Kevin held that check in his hand, and he walked to a bank and opened an account. The teller asked for his address, and Kevin gave LaToya's address, and he felt guilty about that, but he did not know what else to do. He deposited the whole check, except for $40 he kept for bus fare and food. He had a bank account. He had a job. He still did not have a place to live, but he had a bank account. That felt like something. He found a room for rent on Craigslist. A guy named Terrence had a house on Masters Drive in South Dallas, and he was renting a bedroom for $400 a month, including utilities. Kevin called him and went to see the house. It was an old yellow house with a porch that sagged in the middle and a yard full of weeds.
Terrence was 32 years old and worked at a tire shop, and he had 2 kids on the weekends. He showed Kevin the room. It was small, a twin bed, a dresser, a window that faced the street. Kevin said, "I will take it." He gave Terrence $200 for the first 2 weeks, and he moved in that night. He put his sleeping bag on the bed. He hung his clean shirt in the closet. He put his mother's Bible on the dresser. He sat on the edge of the bed and he looked at the 4 walls, and he said out loud to nobody in particular, "I have a room." He said it again, "I have a room." The next 6 months were not easy. Kevin worked 6 days a week. He carried couches and pianos and beds and tables and boxes full of things he could not afford. He watched families move into bigger houses, and he helped them carry their lives from one place to another,
and he did not feel bitter about it. He felt grateful. Every day he had work. Every night he had a bed. He called Mia every Wednesday and every Sunday, and he went to her school play in December, and he sat in the audience and watched her play a tree, and he cried because she was beautiful, and because he was there, and because 6 months ago he was sleeping behind a dumpster watching the same stars she saw from her bedroom window. He saved money, not a lot, but some. $50 here, $100 there. He put it in his bank account and watched the number grow. $400, $700, $1,100.
He bought new work boots at Payless for $39. He bought 2 pairs of jeans at Goodwill for $8 each. He bought a phone charger that worked and a new backpack that did not have holes in it. Small things, but each small thing felt like a brick in a wall he was building around his life. In February, he got his own phone plan, a prepaid thing from Metro PCS, $40 a month for unlimited talk and text. He gave the number to LaToya, and to David, and to Terrence, and to Pastor Brenda from the church, who still called to check on him, even though he did not end up needing the men's program. He felt like a person with connections, a person who mattered to other people. That was worth more than the $40. In March, David gave him a raise, $17 an hour. Kevin did not ask for it. David just called him into the office on a Friday afternoon and said, "You work hard, and you show up, and you do not complain, and Carlos and Big John like you, and that is hard to find. So here is 17. Kevin said, "Thank you." David said, "Do not make me regret it." Kevin said, "I will not." In April, he bought a car, a 2008 Honda Accord with 140,000 miles on it, and a dent in the passenger door, and a radio that only played static. It cost him $2,000. He paid cash. He drove it off the lot on a Thursday afternoon, and he drove straight to LaToya's apartment, and he honked the horn, and Mia came running out, and she jumped in his arms. And he said, "Look, baby, Daddy has a car." Mia said, "Can we go get ice cream?" Kevin said, "We can go anywhere you want." They went to Baskin-Robbins, and Kevin bought Mia a double scoop, and he bought one for himself. And they sat in the car with the engine running and the heat on. And Mia told him about a boy named Marcus who sat next to her in math class, and Kevin listened to every word. That night, he drove to the strip mall on East Broadway. He parked the car in the lot, and he walked behind the dumpster where he used to sleep. The cardboard was gone. The sleeping bag was gone. Somebody else had taken the spot. Kevin stood there for a minute, and he remembered the cold and the wet and the hunger and the way the Chinese takeout place smelled when they threw away the fried rice at 11 o'clock. He remembered the fear, the shame, the voice in his head that said, "You are never getting out of here." He stood there until a man walked around the corner with a shopping cart full of plastic bags. The man looked at Kevin, and Kevin looked at the man, and Kevin saw himself from 6 months ago. He reached in his pocket and pulled out a $20 bill. He held it out to the man and said, "Get yourself a hot meal tonight." The man looked at the money and looked at Kevin and said, "God bless you, brother." Kevin said, "He already did."
The car changed everything. Kevin drove to work every morning at 5:15, and he parked in the gravel lot, and he sat behind the wheel for 5 minutes before he went inside. Those 5 minutes became his favorite part of the day. The quiet, the warmth, the sound of the engine ticking as it cooled down. He had his own space, 4 wheels and a dented door, and a radio that played nothing but static. It was his. He paid for it with money he earned. That feeling never got old. Spring turned into summer, and Dallas got hot the way only Dallas can get hot. 103 degrees by noon, 107 by 3. Kevin drank water by the gallon, and he kept a cooler in the truck with ice and Gatorade that Carlos bought for everybody. They moved furniture in that heat, and Kevin lost 15 pounds without trying. His arms got bigger, his back got stronger. He could carry a washing machine up a flight of stairs by himself, and David started putting him on the hard jobs because he knew Kevin would not quit. That was a strange feeling, being counted on, being the guy people trusted. He had not been that guy in a long time. In June, he paid Terrence the full $400 for the first time without being late. Terrence said, "Good look, man," and Kevin said, "Thank you." And they sat on the sagging porch and drank lemonade and watched the kids play in the street. Terrence had a boy named DeAndre, who was 7, and a girl named Imani, who was 5. They called Kevin Mr.
And they asked him to throw a football with them, and he did. He threw that football until his arm was sore, and DeAndre said, "You throw good, Mr. K." And Kevin said, "Thank you, little man." He thought about Mia. He thought about how many Saturdays he had missed. He thought about all the football games he never threw. He could not get those back, but he could throw the next one. He started going to church on Sundays, not because he found God in a dramatic way. He just started going. The storefront church behind the strip mall where he used to sleep, the one with the plastic bin full of water bottles and granola bars. Pastor Brenda was the one who ran the men's program he never needed. She saw him walk in on a Sunday morning in July, and she smiled like she had been waiting for him. Kevin sat in the back row in a clean shirt and his work boots, and he listened to the music and the prayers and the sermon about a man named Joseph who got thrown in a pit by his own brothers. Pastor Brenda said Joseph did not stay in the pit. She said the pit was not his home. It was just where he passed through on the way to where he was supposed to be. Kevin cried in church that day. He was not the only one. He called LaToya every Wednesday and every Sunday like he promised. Sometimes they talked for an hour, sometimes just 10 minutes, but he always called. He sent money for Mia every month, $200, then $300, then $400. He wrote her letters too.
Real letters on paper with a stamp. He told her about the houses he moved and the people he met and the dog that followed him around a job site in Rockwall for an entire afternoon. Mia wrote him back in purple pen on notebook paper. She drew pictures at the bottom. A sun, a flower, a stick figure with a beard that she labeled Daddy. Kevin kept every letter in the wooden box with her old drawings. In August, David made him the crew leader for the second truck. That meant Kevin was in charge of 2 other men on a separate truck that ran jobs on the east side of the Metroplex. He got a raise to $20 an hour and a gas card and a company phone. He wore a blue shirt with his name on it, Kevin. Not Mr. Williams, just Kevin. But it was his name on a shirt he did not have to return at the end of the day. He drove that truck through Garland and Mesquite and Rowlett and Rockwall, and he learned every back road and every shortcut and every house with a narrow driveway and a steep staircase. He knew where to park and how to angle the truck and when to ask for help and when to just put his head down and lift. The 2 men on his crew were named Marcus and Dre. Marcus was 23 years old, and he reminded Kevin of the kid named Marcus from the strip mall, the one who still had fire in his eyes. Dre was 41, and he had been in prison for 7 years, and he talked about it like it happened to somebody else.
Kevin taught them how to wrap furniture and how to carry a couch through a door without scratching the frame, and how to talk to customers who were stressed out and tired and scared about their move. Marcus said Kevin was the best boss he ever had. Kevin said, "I am not your boss. I am just the guy driving the truck." But he was their boss, and he was good at it. David noticed. In September, David sat him down in the office and said, "I am not getting any younger, and I need somebody who can run this place when I am not here." Kevin said, "What are you saying?" David said, "I am saying I want to make you operations manager. Salary, benefits, a key to the office." Kevin said, "You cannot be serious." David said, "I am serious as a heart attack." Kevin sat there with his mouth open, and David laughed and said, "Close your mouth before a bug flies in it." Kevin closed his mouth. David named a salary, and Kevin almost fell out of his chair. $52,000 a year. Health insurance, 2 weeks paid vacation, a company truck he could drive home. Kevin said yes before David finished the sentence. He called LaToya from the parking lot. She picked up on the first ring, and he told her, and she screamed so loud he heard Mia asking what happened in the background. LaToya put Mia on the phone, and Kevin said, "Baby daddy got a real job with a real salary." And Mia said, "Does that mean you can come to my birthday party?" Kevin said, "I would not miss it for the world." Mia's birthday was November 14th.
She would be 12 years old. Kevin had not been to a single one of her birthdays since she turned 4. He marked the date on the calendar on his new phone, and he looked at it every morning when he woke up. October came around again. A full year since he slept behind the dumpster. Kevin drove to the strip mall on East Broadway on the anniversary. He parked the company truck in the lot, and he walked to the back of the building. The dumpster was still there. The Chinese takeout place was still there. The laundromat and the dollar store and the vape shop and the check cashing place and the storefront church. Kevin stood in the spot where his cardboard used to be, and he closed his eyes and he remembered. The cold, the hunger, the fear, the shame, the sound of the highway, the smell of old grease, the feeling of his back against the brick wall. He remembered Ray and Lisa and the kid named Marcus. He wondered where they were. He hoped they were somewhere warm. He went inside the Chinese takeout place and ordered a combination plate, fried rice, egg roll, orange chicken. He paid with a $20 bill.
and he sat at a table by the window and he ate every bite. The woman behind the counter looked at him like she recognized something. Maybe she remembered him from the nights he used to dig through her trash. Maybe she did not.
Kevin finished his food and he left a $5 tip on the table, and he walked out to his truck and he drove back to the yellow house on Masters Drive, and he sat on the porch with Terrence and DeAndre and Amani, and he watched the sun go down over South Dallas. He did not tell them why today mattered. He just sat there and breathed and felt the weight of how far he had come. In November, he went to Mia's birthday party. LaToya rented a community center over in Mesquite. There were balloons and a cake and a bounce house and 15 screaming kids running around like wild animals. Kevin showed up with a present wrapped in gold paper, a tablet, the kind Mia could use for school and for games and for video calls. It cost him $240. He saved for 3 weeks to buy it. Mia opened the present and her eyes got wide and she screamed and she hugged him so hard he thought his ribs might crack. LaToya looked at him from across the room and she smiled, a real smile, not the tired smile she used to have, a different one. Kevin smiled back. He stayed for the whole party. He helped cut the cake and he pushed kids on the swings outside and he sat in a folding chair and watched his daughter blow out 12 candles. She looked like her mother, but she had his stubbornness. He could see it in the way she set her jaw when she was concentrating.
He watched her run and laugh and scream and be a kid, and he thought about all the birthdays he missed and all the candles he never saw her blow out. That hurt. It would always hurt. But he was here for this one. He was not going to miss another. In December, he got his own apartment, a 1-bedroom on Peachtree Road in Mesquite, $595 a month. A real kitchen with 4 burners that all worked, a bathroom with a shower that did not flicker, a bedroom with a window that faced a tree instead of a wall. Kevin bought a bed from a furniture store, a real bed with a frame and a mattress and pillows that still had the plastic on them. He bought a couch from Goodwill for $40. He bought a table and 2 chairs from a garage sale for $20. He hung a picture of Mia on the wall. He put his mother's Bible on the nightstand. He stood in the middle of the living room on the first night, and he turned in a slow circle, and he said out loud, "This is mine." He said it again, "This is mine." He sat on his couch and he watched a movie on his phone propped against a water bottle, and he fell asleep before the movie ended. He woke up on the couch at 3 in the morning and he walked to his bedroom and he got in his bed and he laid there in the dark and he listened to the quiet. No highway, no rain on a tarp, no drunk guys yelling at nothing. Just quiet. His quiet. He invited Mia over for the first time in January. She came with LaToya on a Saturday afternoon.
Mia ran through the apartment like she was exploring a new world. She opened every cabinet and every closet, and she jumped on the bed and she looked out the window at the tree, and she said, "Daddy, this is nice." Kevin said, "Thank you, baby." LaToya stood in the kitchen and looked at the clean counters and the dishes in the drying rack and the coffee maker that actually worked. She did not say anything. She just looked. And then she nodded. Kevin knew what that nod meant. It meant, "You did it." It meant, "I am proud of you." It meant, maybe. Not yes, not no. Just maybe. And that was enough. He kept working. He kept showing up at 5:15 every morning. He kept carrying couches and pianos and beds and tables. He kept training new guys who reminded him of who he used to be. Hungry, scared, desperate for a chance. He looked at them and he saw himself, and he did not judge them. He just gave them a shot. Some of them took it, some of them did not. The ones who took it reminded him of Marcus, the kid from the strip mall. Kevin wondered about him all the time. He wondered if Marcus got his GED. He wondered if Marcus got a job. He wondered if Marcus was still behind the dollar store or if he found a way out. Kevin hoped he found a way out. In March, he saw Lisa, not behind the strip mall, at a gas station on Buckner Boulevard. She was pushing her shopping cart full of plastic bags, and she was wearing the same 3 jackets, and her hair was matted, and her face was gray.
Kevin was pumping gas into the company truck, and he saw her, and he said, "Lisa." She turned around and looked at him, and she did not recognize him at first. He said, "It's me, Kevin, from behind the strip mall." She stared at him for a long time, and then her face changed. She said, "Oh my God, Kevin, look at you." He walked over to her, and he put his hand on her shoulder and said, "Are you okay?" Lisa said, "I am alive. That is something." Kevin went inside the gas station, and he bought her a hot dog and a bottle of water and a pack of cigarettes, even though he hated cigarettes. He gave them to her, and she took them, and she said, "You got out." Kevin said, "I got out."
Lisa said, "One of us made it." Kevin said, "You can still make it." Lisa laughed, but it was not a mean laugh. It was a tired laugh. She said, "Maybe." She took her shopping cart and she walked away, and Kevin watched her go, and he got back in his truck and he sat there for a minute with his hands on the steering wheel. He thought about how close the line was, how easy it would be to cross back over. He thought about Lisa and Ray and the kid named Marcus and all the people still behind dumpsters all over this city. He started the truck and he drove to work. In April, David had a heart attack, a mild one. He was at home and his wife made him go to the hospital, and the doctors put in a stent and told him to slow down. David was in the hospital for 3 days, and Kevin ran the whole company by himself.
He scheduled the jobs and drove the trucks and dealt with the customers and paid the guys and did not mess up a single thing. David called him from the hospital bed and said, "I told you I needed somebody to run this place." Kevin said, "You need to worry about your heart, not this place." David laughed and said, "You sound like my wife." David came back to work after 2 weeks, but he was different, slower, quieter. He started talking about retirement. He sat Kevin down in May and said, "I want you to buy the company." Kevin said, "Buy the company with what?" David said, "I will finance it. You pay me over time." Kevin said, "I do not have any money for a down payment." David said, "You have something better than money. You have a story. You have a work ethic. You have people who trust you. That is worth more than a down payment." Kevin sat there and he thought about the dumpster and the cardboard and the rain and the hunger and the shame and the hope and the long, hard climb. He thought about David handing him a blue shirt and saying, "Be here at 4:45. He thought about all of it. He said yes. The paperwork took 2 months. Lawyers and contracts and signatures and things Kevin did not fully understand. But David walked him through every page and every number and every line. On July 1st, Kevin Williams became the owner of David's Moving and Storage. He was 49 years old. 3 years ago, he was sleeping behind a dumpster. Now he owned a company.
He sat in David's old chair behind David's old desk, and he looked at the peeling sign on the door, and he did not cry. He was too stunned to cry. He just sat there. He changed the name on the sign, Williams Moving and Storage. He painted the trucks blue and white. He hired more guys. He paid them $15 an hour to start, and $17 if they stayed for 6 months, and $20 if they became crew leaders. He remembered what it felt like to be hungry and scared and desperate for somebody to see him. He saw his guys. He knew their names and their stories and their struggles. He let them sleep in the trucks when they had nowhere to go. He let them eat from the snack drawer in the office. He gave them chances, the way David gave him a chance. Some of them took it. Some of them did not. The ones who took it reminded him of himself. In October, he bought a house, a small 3-bedroom in Mesquite on a street called Maple Lane. It had a yard with a tree and a porch with a swing and a garage that fit his truck. He paid $140,000. He put 20% down and got a mortgage with an interest rate that was not great but not terrible. He moved his furniture from the apartment and he bought new stuff for Mia's room. Purple walls, a white bed, a desk by the window. He hung her drawings on the wall in frames. He put the wooden box on her dresser. He stood in her room on the day he finished, and he imagined her sleeping there and doing homework there and growing up there. He hoped she would stay. He hoped she would want to. He asked LaToya to dinner in November. Not a date, just dinner. They went to a Mexican restaurant on Town East Boulevard, and they sat in a booth, and they ate tacos and talked about Mia and about work and about nothing important. LaToya looked good. She had cut her hair and she was wearing earrings he had never seen before. She said, "Kevin, you look like a different person." Kevin said, "I feel like a different person." LaToya said, "I am proud of you." Kevin said, "That means more than you know." They sat in the parking lot after dinner for an hour, just talking. He did not ask her to come back. She did not offer. But something shifted. He could feel it. The way the air shifts before a storm or before a sunrise. Something was coming. He did not want to rush it. He just wanted to be ready when it arrived. Mia turned 13 in November. Kevin threw the party at his house, the backyard with the tree and the porch swing and the grill that actually worked. He cooked hot dogs and hamburgers, and he made too much food on purpose so people could take plates home. Mia brought her friends, and LaToya came, and LaToya's sister came with her kids, and Terrence came from the yellow house with DeAndre and Imani. Marcus from the crew came, Dre came, David came with his wife, Pastor Brenda came.
The backyard was full of people who knew Kevin's story and people who did not. People who saw him at the bottom and people who only knew him now. Kevin stood by the grill with a spatula in his hand, and he looked at all of them, and he thought about the dumpster. He thought about the cardboard. He thought about the rain and the hunger and the shame. He thought about the cold and the fear, and the voice that said he would never make it out. And then he watched Mia open her presents and laugh with her friends and run around the backyard like a kid who had no idea how close her father came to losing everything. He was glad she did not know. He hoped she would never know. After the party was over and the guests were gone, and LaToya had taken Mia home, Kevin sat on the porch swing by himself. The sun was going down over Mesquite. The sky was orange and pink and purple, the kind of sunset that makes you stop what you were doing and just look. Kevin looked. He thought about the first sunrise he saw behind the dumpster, the one that finally touched the cardboard shelter where broken dreams learned profitable courage again. That sunrise did not fix everything. It did not wave a magic wand. It just came up like it always does, slow and patient and unstoppable. And Kevin was still there when it came. He was still breathing, still hoping, still believing that the next day could be different than the one before. That was the only courage that mattered, not the loud kind, the quiet kind.
The kind that just keeps going when everything says stop. He did not become a millionaire. He did not get famous. He did not write a book or go on TV or stand on a stage and tell his story to thousands of people. He just got a job, then a better job, then a company, then a house, then a life. A simple American life. A life where he could pick his daughter up from school and take her for ice cream and help her with her homework and fall asleep on the couch watching a movie that neither of them was really watching. That was the success. Not the money. The ordinary moments. The ones people with homes and jobs and families take granted every single day. Kevin never took them granted. Not once. Not ever. He kept the wooden box with Mia's drawings on his dresser. He kept the sleeping bag in the garage. He did not know why he kept it. Maybe to remember. Maybe to remind himself that he was one bad month away from being back behind that dumpster. He looked at that sleeping bag sometimes and he thought about all the people who never got out. Lisa, Ray, the kid named Marcus. Thousands of others in every city in America. People with stories as real as his. People who worked as hard as he did. People who just did not catch the same break. He did not pretend to understand why he got out and they did not. He just knew he did. And he knew he had to do something with it. The thing about hitting bottom is that you stop being afraid of falling. You already fell. You already broke.
You already lost everything that mattered. And when you climb back up from that place, you carry something with you that people who never fell do not have. You carry the memory of the bottom. You carry the knowledge that everything can be taken away in a Tuesday morning conversation. You carry gratitude like a weapon. You carry humility like a shield. You carry a story that nobody can take from you. Kevin thought about that every morning when he woke up in his house on Maple Lane. He thought about it when he drove to work in his company truck. He thought about it when he hired a new guy who looked scared and hungry and desperate for somebody to see him. He looked that guy in the eye and he said, "I have been where you are. You can make it out. It will be hard. It will take longer than you want. You will want to give up 1,000 times, but you can make it out." And then he gave him a blue shirt and told him to be there at 5:45. You do not need to be special to climb out of a hole. You do not need to be lucky or gifted or born with something other people do not have. You just need to keep showing up, one day at a time, one job application at a time, one phone call at a time, one hot shower at a time, one night in a real bed at a time. The climb is slow and boring, and most of it happens when nobody is watching. The sunrise comes whether you are ready or not. The question is whether you are still there when it arrives. What are you still showing up for?
What is the thing you have not let go of yet, even though everybody told you to? That thing is not foolish. That thing is not naive. That thing is the only thing that ever saved anybody. Hold on to it. Both hands, fingers tight. Do not let go.